Welcome back to the Mage Meetup, where you listen to a wizard talk about the things he likes and hates in gaming. And unfortunately, I've farmed a little bit of too much XP in my self-reflection stats to the point where I've come to realize that what I miss the most out of gaming compared to when I was a young acolyte isn't even the idea of having just better games all the time. Isn't that crazy? I've had to come to terms with the fact that good new games will, in some way, shape, or form, always be there, like a Michael Jackson song. It's just a matter of, cracking the damn blueprints puzzle level process just to find them now. See, man, what I freaking miss is the little intricacies in gaming that made the whole experience feel like you had to physically be there just to assert yourself as someone in the hobby. Things that admittedly do reflect the more limited times of the past compared to now, where we all carry these glass devices that are literally one A button press from evolving into sentient beings. We don't have a lot of reason to do a lot of shit anymore, given how easy it is to do it from literally any spawn point of the global map in less than likely 10 seconds if you have Apple Pay on standby. And honestly, man, I can't lie, it's kind of spoiled us from probably the most treasured experience of a young person's canon event timeline, and my personal thing to reflect on in my young wizard lifestyle being the times of just taking a good stroll down a video game aisle, no matter what store it was. Specifically though, Nintendo, since these sneaky bastards always found a way to take up the most shelf real estate, given how they usually had a console and sometimes even multiple handhelds out in rotation during console generations before the Nintendo Switch came along. Something that's kind of hard to believe right now, given how half of most Nintendo aisles are still empty in desperate need of a console re-up. And yeah, we're only like 2 months into the new console generation for Nintendo, so I am kind of swinging below the belt talking about this right now. I play Fight Night dirty, but scarcity isn't the sole reason that's plaguing the dramatically, I would say, less fun experience of going down a Nintendo aisle right now. Again, reflection of the times. Back then, we lived in a cornucopia world of just physical based media that actually prioritized games with disc and cartridges, and game manuals too. What happened with that? A time where you mostly had to go out to a store to find the new or old game that you wanted. And while online shopping was definitely a thing back then, it was more of a reserved experience for the more tech savvy or the ones who just really didn't have the time to go and find a game out and about if they had a time crunch going on for Christmas shopping or something. Because man, most times outside of day and date with big releases, the average big box store had the stock of every game that you could possibly want. Because man, when was the last time you walked into Walmart stocked to the brim like this, where it was just a glass of games locked behind a glass door and a demo at the top where you likely learn how cricks develop in your neck? Damn man, the old glass game display cases. We traded in those refrigerator height display cabinets for the new China glass level IKEA displays that you would find at mom's house. From what I remember, Walmart and Kmart had the best display cabinets with the most abundance level of games, also with game demos to accompany them. I think we all have very vibrant memories of just going to a Walmart, looking up and down at that big ass selection of games, and then bugging a Walmart employee to just come and unlock the game for you to choose after like 20 minutes just standing there looking. Now, largely that specific process does remain the same since thievery is at an all-time high even now, but the only difference is the stock level from back in the day is nowhere near compared to how it is now, at least on the floor. Sometimes you can ask and they might have games in the back like at Walmart or something, but back then I'm almost sure that all the stock they had, they just put it out on the floor and you could see it, all the games behind the specific game that you were even looking at. And even if they didn't have the game there on the floor, they still found a way to make it a fun and memorable experience when you had places like Toys R Us that had these game slip walls where you actually had to take the game slip to the cash register and then they would give you the actual game, which is still a really fun concept to have. Something that's kind of in some way, shape, or form at Target, where they have these Nintendo Switch games that don't have the actual physical releases there. They just have a freaking picture of the game, where they may have it behind the little contraption, but most times when you ask, they'll just tell you straight up that they just don't have that shit. You see, when it comes to Nintendo, given how they've always usually had a select library of exclusive games and hardware that most players are buying when they're looking into the whole Nintendo ecosystem, they've never really had that much of a stock issue unless like a new game or a new console comes out around that beginning stages. So walking into a store and finding at least one copy of a game or a console or a freaking controller that I'm looking for has never been a problem for me from what I can remember growing up and even like right now. The only thing is, the stock of games and consoles have gone down dramatically, which at least kills the illusion of a wonderland that the Nintendo aisle used to radiate in the early 2000s into even the 2010s, where now you'll feel like the only thing they have in abundance is all those damn third-party controllers, man. Shout out to Power A. But looking at more game-focused store, really just GameStop now, since everything else is GameStop nowadays is probably still the most intact experience from what you remember of it, of, you know, the heyday of gaming, where they still have their big wall of new games and old games that you would probably even want for the Nintendo Switch or the current generation. They still have their whole pre-owned section. They have their game controllers and baggage by the cash register, which they swear are good condition, even though Stick Drift says otherwise. Despite GameStop mostly leaning heavily into just merchandise and action figures, which I love buying at GameStop, they still keep their Nintendo aisle as Nintendo as it possibly can be, which is a really cool thing to have for however long it's going to be until the eventual decline. We all know what's coming. But that doesn't change the fact that what's missing from all game aisles just globally on a front where we just don't see it that much at all is just the presence of physical media outside of the games that pertain to this whole hobby, like, you know, game guides, game magazines for the most part now. Like, dude, don't you remember where every big game got a Prima game guide that was sitting at the top of a game aisle where you would flip through during your trips to Target or Walmart, and it would just be a really cool book to have if you bought it actually? Hell, game guides weren't even only exclusive to the biggest games releasing, since back then it wasn't as common for every player to just look up a certain section of a game on the internet and just figure out what the hell to do. Back then, it was almost essential for publishers to also release game guides simultaneously with the games that they were releasing, to where now, since you can literally Google a YouTuber for even the most niche game out there, now game guides are really only reserved in stores, at least for the biggest of the biggest franchise. Like, I found this Pokemon book, which isn't even for the game, it's just for the Pokemon franchise in general. I found this at Target for like $13, which I use for my Pokemon games now. And it's just a novelty that publishers reserved for special editions or collector's edition of games, which I don't know why they think we wouldn't buy this shit up nowadays, given how long it's been since this has been like a really adopted thing in gaming. Like, there's so many people who miss physical media right now that I have no doubt if Nintendo went ahead and just released more physical media for the Nintendo Switch 2 generation, that people would buy that shit up. Like, people love that kind of stuff. Look at Amiibos. They just hit a price hike that's borderline undoable, and people are still buying that shit. It's just all the little things missing that are doing passive damage to the whole idea of a Nintendo aisle, which just degrades the whole presentation of just going down a Nintendo section of a store, which, you know, broadly speaking, the Nintendo presentation section, I will say they do kind of still keep the charm even nowadays. Like, a few weeks ago, I took a picture of those big hanging cutouts for Mario Kart World at my local Target. I thought that was pretty cool that they're spending money to at least advertise this game as half-baked as it is right now. Like, big cutouts, big statues, big like posters that grab your attention. That's what I think the epitome of Nintendo aisle should radiate all the time. That and then some. So seeing that in 2025 was really cool to me, you know, on an average scroll of me just going down to Target. And while they obviously still do put some effort into their aisles more than their competitors, that's for damn sure, I just get icky going down the Xbox section. I can't even call that an aisle. After the N64 Game Boy Color era, which most players associate as like the peak of Nintendo aisle and just presentation, I can't act like the Nintendo aisle was anything like crazy after that, even into the like Game Boy, Wii era, or the DS era. Obviously, not speaking for the nostalgia aspect of it and the overall stock levels, but I really do prefer the more bright presentation of every era before the Wii U came and it was just blue, or the Nintendo Switch where it was just red, and now it's really red now for Nintendo Switch 2. Like the color palette, it's not bad nowadays. Like I'm not actively mad anytime that I'll go down a Nintendo section, outside of the sight of seeing more freaking gift cards than games there nowadays. Like it's a freaking gift shop now. But as much as it makes sense from a marketing standpoint, where you have blue for PlayStation, green for Xbox, and now red for Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2, I'm just not a fan of like the solid red color. That is my favorite, well, second favorite color. It just seemed like they put an effort to design the aesthetic of these older console generations to where now it just feels like it's red, Nintendo logo 2. Like that's all you have now. And what can I say, man? It gets the job done. It's not affecting their sales in any way that I can measure. So it's probably not something that they're going to take into account unless, you know, just the whole design aesthetic of the world changes to go more towards what it used to be, a more fruitier arrow, more just color palettes of a wider range. I don't know, man. I just know that going down the Nintendo aisle right now is just fine. It gets the job done. But back then, it used to be just so much more fun.